whether you're camping... No, that's wrong.
Even the boring and mundane journeys can be fun in the California, isn't that right, kids? That's what you said.
Oh, you've said it, there you go. I don't need to say it anymore.
No, you need to say it in a nice way.
Even the mundane journeys can be fun in this thing, isn't that?
You have to not talk at the same time as Dad. Isn't that right, kids?
Yay! You get what I'm saying. And scene! There are few new cars that are as utterly joyful to own and run as one of these things, the Volkswagen California. More famously known, of course, as the camping van. And there are none that give you the very specific sort of joy that this one does. Well, that's not quite true. There's the Mercedes one that's basically exactly the same, but we'll come back to that later. That aside, the specific awesomeness of this is the sense of absolute freedom that it gives you. You know that already, of course. You and everybody else, that is, because the other thing about the California is just how much love there is for it on the streets. 1 week with this thing and I've had more people staring at it and more people stopping me to talk about it than I have for my last 12 months of test cars. That includes some supercar stuff too. And when people do talk about it, they invariably say roughly the same thing. They say, ooh, I've always wanted one of these. And then they say, oh, they're proper expensive these though, right? They're all in Newcastle, these people, obviously. And I say, yes, they flipping well are. Then I tell them that the car I'm driving there is £65,000. And that's not including whatever VW paid Wayne Sleep to buy his personal number plate off him.
Wayne Sleep, the stage is yours.
And then they go, bloody hell, or some such. And then we both look wistfully into the distance, wondering whether we'll ever have 65 grand to spend on one. And then I'll break the silence by doing the Big California guided tour. It includes making the roof go up, opening the awning, showing them where the fridge, the gas hob and the sink are, the various storage places and the clever gap in which the chairs are ensconced, the two swivelly chairs at the front, the pop-up table, the fold-out bed, and I finish it by finally inviting them to clamber up into the roof bit where the double bed is. Which they refuse because, well, it would just be weird, wouldn't it? Point is, here's a van that is rammed with very clever, very stylish ways of ensuring that a family of four can rock up pretty much anywhere and live there for a bit. I mean, to go further into the specs and the ways that it does that, the California also comes packing an auxiliary heater, a 30-litre fresh water tank, 2 high-capacity batteries and an all-weather power cable so you can plug into the mains if you like, and a gas supply for the twin hob. And there's nice things like ambient lighting as well as the big light, and separate air conditioning controls for the back. And you can option stuff like heat insulating glass, and this awesome two-tone paint, which I seem to be the only one who likes, but I think it's great. And it is a bit expensive. 2.5 grand. And it's all squeezed into a standard-sized Volkswagen T6 transporter van, which means it has a relatively short wheelbase, so it doesn't feel like you're driving around in the London Philharmonic's tour bus. In fact, you could feasibly use this as your day-to-day car. For instance, you can see here that it fits into a standard-sized parking space, no bother. And the side door slides, which makes it easier to get in and out if space is a bit tight. And to drive, it is an absolute event. Really it is. There's not really much point in talking about this like I would a normal car, you know, about the ride and the handling and stuff like that. Because being up here kind of transcends all that stuff, really. I mean, if you must know about that stuff, quantifiably not that great really. There's quite a din from the engine if it's a diesel, which it probably is. And if it's windy, that contributes to quite a noisy atmosphere in here. It also feels like this might blow over sometimes if the wind's going across you. It does ride pretty comfortably though, especially considering how much weight the suspension's dealing with. All 2.5 tons of it. Yeah, it's a bit of a lot of arse. And really, the sheer weight of this thing is only really felt when you're braking and occasionally when you're turning. It feels like what it is. It's a van full of stuff, and stuff that rattles quite a lot if I'm honest. I can't work out whether it's the table or the cup holder or the countertop, but there's something rattling fairly consistently back there. It's quite roly-poly, you feel a lot of weight transfer, but again, it's just so cool driving this thing that you don't really think about that stuff too much. It doesn't bother you. So you sit really high and upright and you feel like you're right on top of the engine. So that contributes to this feeling of actually pretty good visibility, especially at the front. You know where the corners are. Maneuvering this thing actually feels quite easy and pretty enjoyable. It moves too, surprisingly. 3 engines, 2 of them diesels and 1 petrol. And although the latter avoids the gruffness of the former pair, we wouldn't necessarily recommend it based on its fuel economy and its relative lack of pulling power.
I can't see you, obviously, but I bet you've all got smashing glasses on.
And that leaves you with a diesel. So sensible money buys the lower powered one, but you know, go big or go home and all that. And get this one, the Bi TDI with more than 200 horsepower and, much more importantly, 450 newton meters of torque. It's noisy, as you would expect, but it does shift. And that's yet another thing that contributes to the feeling of incongruous maneuverability that this big thing has. The throttle response is slightly sluggish with DSG, which is another thing you should get. Auto's just much more comfy in a big thing like this, isn't it? But after the initial lethargy, which is actually a problem that we're seeing more and more with Volkswagen Group cars at the moment, there is a quite surprising and highly delightful sense of swiftness.
I like it a lot.
And actually, over the last week or so that I've had with this thing, and not a great deal of that spent on the motorway, I've managed to get close to 30 miles per gallon out of it. That's canny. I mean, of course it'll dip if you get a 4-wheel drive one of these, which might be handy if you're a proper adventurer and planning on taking this on all kinds of backwater DIY camping expeditions. But if not, it's probably £3 that you don't need to spend. Things that you should spend on include parking sensors, like I said before. Visibility at the back's not that good because of the cupboards and things, so you probably want to get parking sensors. And sat-nav, which is a proper rip-off at 1,500 quid, but hey, what's £1.50 among 60, eh? Although you don't have to spend that much to get a California experience of sorts. The kitchen sink one called Ocean starts at £57,000, but you can get one called Beach that starts a lot lower. It's unburdened by the weight of the kitchen, and for that reason you can get it with an even lower power diesel that I didn't mention earlier. But that's less a camper van and more a super duper people carrier that will seat up to 7 and sleep up to 4. Which could possibly save you a fortune in service station hotel bills. And in fact, in the very niche pantheon of van-based people movers, isn't catastrophically priced given its flexibility and, by nature, its enormous boot. It's a lot cheaper than a Mercedes V-Class, for example. Although speaking of which, it's Mercedes that really gives this thing its main problem. The Marco Polo might be a blatant rip-off of this thing in pretty much every way, but just as Nickelback did with Nirvana, it does take something absolutely classic and improve on it. We can all agree that. That was clearly a joke, just for clarity. Although the Marco Polo is a bit better than the California, not by much, but it just has a sense of higher quality, especially when you're driving it. Dashboard's a lot better. And it's a bit more refined, and surprisingly, it's a bit better priced. But potato, tomato, and actually, I think there's very real, albeit unquantifiable, value in having a proper Volkswagen camper van, you know? There's history behind it. Which kind of links to the other thing that tends to come up when I'm speaking to other enthusiastic wannabe camper van owners. The idea of buying a used one. The T6 California here is a good couple of years old now, which means that pre-stained ones are available. Although very few, it transpires. And those that are tend not to be the massive bargains that you're probably hoping for. This is an RV with pretty staggering RVs. There's 2 ways of looking at that. 1, you're not going to get your half-price California, but 2, it does mean that a brand new one is a relatively good investment as far as cars go. So in conclusion, you should definitely get one of these. Go on, you know you want to. There you go, California, camper van, whatever you want to call it. And before I go, just to mitigate the obvious complaint that I didn't show you any footage of me camping in this thing, I just didn't think that you needed to see any grainy nighttime footage of me cooking a pot noodle in my underpants. Although if you do want to read about what happened when I took my family winter camping in a T5 a couple of years ago, I'll put a link somewhere either on the screen or below. It was hilarious. Thanks for watching anyway, I appreciate it. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so and have a look at our other reviews. And there's a full review of this over at HonestJohn.co.uk as always. I'll see you next week. Bye.